Right, hello everyone. Yes, tonight we're going to be talking about Terry Meltcher's testimony. This is actually from Charles Watson's trial. Luckily, I noticed this before I did the stream because, it's hard to find his testimony from the actual Manson trial. But the thing about Charles Watson's trial is the people that testified in the Manson trial that also testified at Texas trial generally said the same thing anyway. But yeah, this is from Charles Watson's trial, and I'll change the title on the thumbnail by the time this goes up again after I've edited it. But yeah, and I'm also going to be reading from Chaos to tell you about how, he lies. He sort of, seems to perjure himself a bit. Tom O'Neill found when he investigated. So yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. I'll just say hello to everyone. And I'll make sure there's chapters in the description so you can have a look. Go straight to that if you want to skip over the discussion bits. Right, yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, it's Christmas this week as well, which won't matter to you if you're watching this months later on playback. But Tex's favourite Christmas stuff. What would he be drinking? Yeah, Datura eggnog. Is that what they gave him in prison to make him go crazy again, so he wouldn't be fit to stand trial? Yes, because when I was reading it, I thought it was strange how much they talked about Tex, but that's because it's at Tex's trial. And he does seem to contradict something that he said at the Manson trial, according to Chaos. I don't think I've got that in the slides, but I'm sure I read earlier when I was looking at Chaos that he said at the original trial, he said he never saw Tex inside Cielo Drive. He put him at the house, but never inside the house. But at Texas trial, he says he did see him inside the house, as you'll hear when I read it all out in a bit. Yeah, hello. Welcome if you're new here as well. The first live you've been to. That's good. Yeah, I'll make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So I'm nearly at 1,500 subscribers now, which is quite amazing, really. Yeah. Right, I'll probably get on with reading. Give us something to talk about. Because it's quite crazy how much they covered up. Start by reading this little bit of Chaos. Gibbons was a woman that worked at the DA's office with Bugliosi. I took Gibbons out to lunch and found her impressively forthright, soft-spoken and direct. She was certain that Bugliosi had covered up for Terry Meltcher during the trial. The two must have made some kind of deal. You testify to this and I'll keep you out of that. She also confirmed that Bugliosi had stolen a bunch of the DA's files for his book, knowing full well that it was illegal to remove them. It bothered her that he was always portrayed as upstanding and above board. He was a snake. She could still recall the sight of a vein throbbing in his temple. If I ever saw that vein, she warned me, it meant that Bugliosi was about to blow his stack. And then in this bit, she says, over the years, Manson researchers have generally agreed that Melcher was stretching the truth. Karina Longworth, whose podcast, You Must Remember This, devoted a whole season to Manson, said in one episode that Melcher was vague about the details of his meetings with Manson and probably shaved a couple of visits to the ranch off the official record. It would be one thing to fudge the numbers a bit. It's easy to see why someone would want to understate their relationship with Charles Manson. But I became convinced that this was graver than that. I found proof that Melcher was much closer to Manson, Tex Watson, and the girls than he had suggested. A year before the murders, he even lived with a member of the family at the house on Cielo Drive. There was a strong likelihood that Melcher knew, immediately after the crimes, that Manson was involved, but he never told the police. I found evidence that Melcher lied on the stand, under oath, and Bugliosi definitely knew about it. Maybe he'd even put him up to it. It's a burning witness perjury. So, yeah, as you can see, Melcher, lied in court. And Bugliosi covered for him, and people that worked in the office at the time witnessed this. You could see this. Right. And I'll start reading out the testimony now. But yeah, like I say, this is from Charles Watson's trial. Not the main trial as I thought. You can't find that easily. Terence Melcher's testimony. Transcript of Terry Melcher's testimony during People versus Charles Watson, Monday, August 23rd, 1971. This is just him swearing him in and spelling his name. Direct examination by Mr. Bugliosi. Mr. Melcher, what is your occupation? I'm a producer of recordings and television programs. You are actress Doris Day's son. That is correct. Mr. Melcher, did you previously reside at the address 10050 Cielo Drive in the city of Los Angeles? Yes, sir. During what period of time did you live there? The approximate. About 2.5 to 3 years, beginning the summer of 66. Between the summer of 68 and let's say early 69. Right. And you leased the residence? Correct. From whom? Mr. Alterbelly. Is that Rudy Alterbelly? That's right. He spells Alterbelly. Right. And when you moved out of the Cielo address, do you know who the next tenants were? Mr. Alterbelly leased the house to the Polanskis. That is Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski. That is right. Do you know Charles Manson? Yes, sir. When is the first time you met Charles Manson? Sometime during the summer of 1968. Where did you meet him? At the home of a friend of mine named Dennis Wilson. Was that Dennis's address located at 14400 Sunset Boulevard? It was. All right. Is Dennis Wilson a drummer for the Beach Boys recording group? He is. And he is a friend of yours. He's been for a long time. Do you recall what Mr. Manson was doing inside Mr. Wilson's residence? I believe he was living there, and the day I met him, he was playing the guitar and singing songs. I take it you eventually left the Wilson residence that day. Did someone take you home from the Wilson residence? Yes. Who was that? Dennis drove me home. Was anyone else in the car? Manson was in the car, yes. Where was he located in the car? In the back seat. So Dennis drove you home to the address 10050 Cielo Drive? Yes. And Manson was in the back seat? Correct. Did either Manson or Wilson get out of the car at your address? No, sir. They dropped you off at the gate? Yes. And then you entered and they turned around and left? Right. Well, it wasn't at the gate. It was inside the gate in the parking area. You entered the gate? Right. You got out of the car and then they left? Right, that is correct. When is the next time you saw Mr. Manson, if at all? I think about a year later. Do you know the approximate month? I did some while back. In fact, I think we ascertained it was about May of 1969. May of 1969? Yes. Was that the next time you saw Mr. Manson? Yes, sir. And where did you see him at that time? It was at an old movie ranch, at the Spahn Ranch. Spahn Ranch? Right. Chatsworth, California? That's correct. Do you know Greg Jacobson? Yes. Would you briefly explain your acquaintanceship with Mr. Jacobson? Mr. Jacobson was in my employ as a talent scout, and from time to time, although he wasn't in my employ at the time, he took me to Spahn Ranch. Previous to that, he had from time to time brought either composers and or performers in to audition for me, to record, and that is how I happened to be at the Spahn Ranch that May of 1969. You went out to Spahn Ranch to audition someone? That is right. Mr. Manson? That is right. And was it at Mr. Jacobson's suggestion that you went out to Spahn Ranch to audition Charles Manson? That's right. So Mr. Jacobson told you about Charles Manson? The fact that he was an artist or he played the guitar and sang? Right. And when you went out there in May of 1969 to the Spahn Ranch, were you with Mr. Jacobson? Yes, I was. Anyone else? No. And did Mr. Manson in fact perform for you? Yes, he did. Played the guitar? Yes, he did. And sang songs? Yes. How long did this audition take place? Perhaps an hour? Where did it take place? It's hard to pin down. The buildings weren't really inhabitable. They were mostly living outside, and it was in I suppose you might call it a gully. Behind the buildings? Right. And after you listened to Mr. Manson sing and play his guitar, did you talk to Mr. Manson? Briefly. What did he say to you? Not too much. He expressed a keen desire to record, and I asked him a few basic questions. I gave him a few basic suggestions, and I found out that he wasn't in any union, like the AFL, which is a musicians' union, or AFTRA, which is the vocalists' union, and therefore he couldn't really professionally record. He told me that he didn't want to join those unions. Did you give Mr. Manson any money? I did, yeah. How much? I think it was $50. Why did you give him $50? Well, they all seem to be hungry. When you say all, whom are you referring to? Well, there were maybe 30 people there, Manson and several girls, or just Manson and a lot of people. So you felt sorry for them and you gave Mr. Manson $50. Well, sorry, or charity, yeah, perhaps sorry. When you heard Mr. Manson play the guitar and sing, were you impressed with Mr. Manson as a singer and a guitarist? No, I wasn't. Did you end up recording Mr. Manson? No, I didn't. Is the reason you did not do so that you were just not impressed with him? That, and also the previous reasons that I gave, which were that he was not a union member. Correct, sir. Did you convey the fact that you were not interested in Mr. Manson? Did you convey this fact to Mr. Jacobson? Yes, I did. When is the next time, if at all, you saw Mr. Manson? I told Mr. Jacobson that the only way I could see Manson being recorded would be if someone with a remote recording unit were to bring it to the ranch itself, because he wouldn't be allowed into a professional studio without union status. So I went back there with a friend named Mike Dacey and Jacobson, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days later, a week later, I'm not certain. You went back to Spahn Ranch. Right, so that Mr. Dacey might have a chance to hear him sing and play. Did Mr. Manson then perform for Mr. Dacey? Right. In your presence? Right. And was Greg Jacobson also there? Yes, sir. Directing your attention to defendant Charles Watson, who I'm pointing at right here. Have you seen him before? Right, and I'm just going to go back to the slides for a second to show you how much he has lied there, basically. Well, this is from John Phillips' biography, for example, because you notice he said there he never recorded Charles Manson because he wasn't a union member, so he couldn't get in any professional studio. And I recalled a strange conversation I had with Dennis Wilson about a year earlier. He and Melcher had talked about this wide-eyed, self-proclaimed god who tripped on acid and imposed absolute control over a harem of hippie chicks. They had all pulled up to Dennis's house toward the beach on sunset in a psychedelic bus and moved in. This guy Charlie's here with all these great-looking chicks, he told me once. He plays a guitar and he's a real wild guy. He has all these chicks hanging out like servants. You can come over and just fuck any of them you want. It's a great party. Terry called me once or twice about the same guy and said he had some songs and played me a tape once of his music, and I wasn't particularly impressed. Terry was apparently at one time considering giving the guy a break and producing a song, but had rightly changed his mind. I never went out there. It sounded a little too crazy and cosmic for me. Then I heard Charlie and his sex slaves moved out of Dennis's house and took $100,000 worth of recording equipment and personal belongings. So yeah, well, the thing to take away there is he said he did hear a recording of Charles Manson. And then this is again from Chaos. As one of the biggest bands in the world, the Beach Boys employed a retinue of managers, roadies, engineers, and gophers. I wondered if any of them had any thoughts on Wilson and Melcher, or if they could fill in some blanks for me. The band's surviving members had all declined to speak to me. I got in touch with John Parks, who'd been the band's tour manager, when Manson and the family lived at Wilson's place. He recalled that Melcher had not only met Manson, but recorded him too. Terry recorded him while we were on a fairly long tour, Parks told me. That was something else Melcher had expressly denied on the stand, something hidden for all these decades. Bugliosi repeated it in his closing statement. He did not record Manson. So yeah. So this is it. Alright, and yeah, this is Rudy Outerbelly as well. In November of that year, when the police told Outerbelly that Manson was responsible for the murders, the first thing he did was call the two Carrolls. I said because of their husbands, I was stuck with all of this. I was left in the lurch. They knew what was happening at the house. Terry was the instigator of the whole thing. Outerbelly seemed to be toying with the idea of letting me in on something bigger. He did this a lot. A seemingly offhand remark would complicate his entire portrait of the period. Terry talked about Manson all the time, he said. He thought he was wonderful. He asked me to manage him. But hadn't Terry said he wanted nothing to do with him? Terry stalked Manson. They thought they had Jesus Christ. So yeah, you can see all that, basically. And when he was in court, Terry Meltcher obviously said he wasn't impressed with Manson and that he didn't record him. But there's all these other people that Tom O'Neill found saying that he did record him. And also John Phillips talked about hearing recordings of Manson. I know he was recorded at Brian Wilson's studio as well, wasn't he? But yeah, Terry Meltcher had a recording that he played, that Terry Meltcher played to John Phillips. So obviously lying about not recording him. Now I'll go back to the transcript because this is Texas trial. So you get this because apparently, according to Chaos, he denied Tex was ever in the house at Cielo Drive, but at this trial, he doesn't. Right, so directing your attention to defendant Charles Watson. So just want to check this on the screen. Yes. Directing your attention to defendant Charles Watson, who I'm pointing to right here. Have you ever seen him before? Yes, sir. When did you see Mr. Watson for the first time? Sometime in the summer of 1968. Where at? At Dennis Wilson's house. On Sunset Boulevard? Yes. Have you ever seen Mr. Watson inside your former residence at 10850 CLA Drive? Yes. Approximately how many times? I can't be certain. Several. Watson was a friend of Wilson's and Jacobson's and was often tagging around with either or both of those men. So whenever they would drop by, not whenever, but when they would drop by, he would be with them. Can you give us an approximate number of times you saw Mr. Watson inside your former residence at 10850 CLA Drive? I would say approximately 6. It's a very rough guess. So he's just said he saw him 6 times inside CLA Drive. And apparently at the Manson trial, he said he never saw him inside the house. Do you recall what part of your former residence Mr. Watson was in on any of these occasions? He could have been in one room, or he could have been in all the rooms. I really don't know. I wasn't keeping track. During that period of time, was Mr. Watson at your residence? You said 6 times, encompassing, let's say, what period? I guess it would all be, I'm sorry, let me retract that. All 6 times would have fallen somewhere in the summer of 68. To your knowledge, did Mr. Watson ever stay overnight at your residence? No, Mr. Jacobson took care of my house for me about 4 months while I was in Europe doing some recording. When was that? That was in, I believe I left in the fall of 1968, and Watson may have stayed there then. You don't know? I'm not certain. It's possible. Did you have a Jaguar car around this period of time? Yes, I did. Did you ever loan Dean Morehouse that car? I did. Do you know the approximate date? No, I don't, but I'm sure that the summer of 68 again. In your records, yes. To your knowledge, did you loan the car to Mr. Morehouse and Mr. Watson? I loaned it to Mr. Morehouse. Was Mr. Watson present when you did this? I believe that Mr. Watson went along with Mr. Morehouse on the trip, yes. During the summer of 1968, did Mr. Watson look the way he does right now? But he wasn't wearing a tie. What about his hair? It was a little longer. What about his weight? Would you care to have him stand up? Well, he is thinner. He's thinner now. Yeah. Did he have a beard? Not that I recall, sir. These 6 times that you met Mr. Watson, did you notice anything at all unusual about him? Nothing at all, except he was very pleasant, friendly. What was that last thing you said, sir? You said that he was very pleasant and friendly. Thank you. No further questions. Right. I'll just have a little break for some discussion here. So yeah, well, that's pretty crazy, isn't it? Straight away. He's totally lied. And apparently, yeah, at the first trial, because I can't find the transcript of that, but when I was looking through Chaos earlier, apparently at the Manson trial, he said that he'd never seen Tex inside the house. But there he says he saw him inside the house 6 times. So that's mental, isn't it? Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. 6 or 0. Easy mistake to make, yeah. That's it. And like I say, there's an even crazier slide about Melcher seeing Manson after the trial as well and all that. And not after the trial, sorry, after the murders. Yeah, before the arrest, but after the murders, yeah. We'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. Let's look at the chat for a minute, see what people are saying. It was, yeah, interesting though, and to hear from the woman that worked for the DA's office that she thinks that they covered up for Bugliosi. Bugliosi covered up for Melcher as well. Wonder if he paid him. But yeah, it's just, well, nuts, isn't it, really? And hearing all this about Terry Meltcher. Well, finding out that Terry Meltcher produced Mr. Tambourine Man and Turn was quite depressing for me. Because folk rock kind of has a cleaner image than the harder rock genres, doesn't it, really? But no, turns out they're all at the top. Run by a load of exploitative, perverted weirdos. Yeah, because it gets worse as well, some of the stuff that I read out from Chaos in a minute. In fact, I might as well just get on with that. Meanwhile, yeah, I'd started to hear more sordid stuff about Melcher's affiliation with the family. Bob April, a retired carpenter who'd been a fringe member of the family, told me with confidence that Manson would supply girls for executive parties that Melcher threw, giving well-heeled business types unfettered access to Manson's girls. But what would Manson get in return? That's why everyone got killed, April said. He didn't get what he wanted. Melcher had promised Manson a record deal on Day Labels, his mother's imprint, but Doris Day took one look at Manson and laughed at him and said, "You're out of your mind if you think I'm going to produce a fucking record for you." Said it to Charlie's face. Melcher and Manson knew each other very well, April said. "I've tried to get this out for years." And yeah, Diane Lake kind of backs that up in the new documentary that came out. She says that she remembers going to parties, yeah, and having to sleep with the host of the parties. Yeah, sorry if you're trying to read this along as well. Trying to get it all on one page is quite hard because it runs across a couple of pages of the book. Right. In the crossed out sections of Bugliosi's notes, to my astonishment, DiCarlo described 3 visits by Terry Meltcher to the Manson family after the murders. I read them, reread them, and reread them again. I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. I took scrupulous word-for-word notes, in case Gibbons looked too closely at the flagged pages and realised that they completely upended one of the most important cases in her office's history. Luckily, she let me photocopy them without a second glance. At home, I looked again. I hadn't imagined it. In an interview on February the 11th, 1970, DiCarlo described Melcher's 2 visits to the Spahn Ranch in late August and early September 1969, and his 3rd visit to the Barker Ranch more than 200 miles away in mid-September. According to Bugliosi's notes, DiCarlo didn't approach Melcher on any of these occasions, so he didn't know what Melcher and Manson discussed, but he was certain each time that it was Melcher he saw. Bugliosi's notes on the 2 visits to the Spahn Ranch read, DiCarlo, released 72 hours after the bust on 8/16/69, went back to Venice for a few days and then went back to Spahn Ranch. Week or a week and a half later, went up to Barker with Tex and Bruce Davis in a flatbed truck. Manson and 4 or 5 girls left at the same time in a car. The rest of the family stayed at Spahn. Between the time that Danny returned to the ranch and the time we left for Barker, definitely saw Melcher out at Spahn Ranch. Heard girls say, "Terry's coming, Terry's coming." Melcher drove up in a metro truck by himself, and Melcher stayed for 3 or 4 hours. 3 or 4 days later, saw Melcher in his same truck. Then he writes of a 3rd visit, which occurred in the canyon passageway to the family's hideout in Death Valley. 1.5 weeks later, saw Melcher with Gypsy and Brenda at bottom of Gola Walsh near Ballarat, sitting in a car with the girls. DiCarlo was with Sadie, Tex, Manson, Bruce, and Dennis, witness's child, on foot. All of them got in Melcher's car. Everyone in the car. Brenda had been the driver, Melcher only a passenger. Everyone called Melcher Terry. Charlie took over the driver's seat and drove to Ridgecrest and picked up a 1959 Buick. DiCarlo and the rest of them drove off, leaving Melcher, Manson, and Brenda in the car they had. That's the last time the witness saw Melcher. I cross-referenced this with the trial transcripts, which I'd photocopied in the California Court of Appeals, pulling Melcher's testimony from my filing cabinet. I saw that the grand jury in December 1969, Bugliosi had asked him whether he ever saw Manson after his May 1969 visit to the Spahn Ranch. "No, I didn't," Melcher replied, under oath. So yeah, that's crazy. So he saw him. He even was at Barker Ranch, which is right, the final stand where they got arrested. He saw them lots of times, basically. Well, DiCarlo didn't know what he was doing there and didn't hear what was going on, but puts him there. And Bugliosi covered this up, basically. It's shocking. Yeah, that's it. He didn't mention him after mid-May. Yeah. He said on the stand. Crazy. Well, the thing about it is as well, they didn't need the girls really, because apparently they had loads of girls throwing themselves at them, didn't they? The golden penetrators. I'm guessing, yeah, it was just there because they could. And it was good to have them for parties, I suppose, or whatever. That was what it was suggested there, wasn't it? That you used them for the parties. But that's it. Apparently they had loads of girls volunteering because they were seen as like powerful in the music industry or whatever, weren't they? Yeah. And what's the final one of these? Who's this? Oh God, yeah. And Jacobson talks about Ruth Ann Morehouse. Jacobson told me he never really took Manson all that seriously. There was so much bullshit, he said. I never tried to make sense out of it. I didn't care. He left open the possibility that there'd be some scheming to make the story more presentable at trial. I wonder if Bugliosi was doing Melcher a favour, he said to me, or there was some I can't say the word. I can't say it there. Honest to God, I have no knowledge of it. He was a little more willing to talk about Melcher's attraction to the girls in the family. He might have been carrying on with one of the girls. He told me through Melcher, though Melcher had fiercely denied exactly that. I had a soft spot for little Ruth Ann Morehouse. He might have too. She was the little gem of the group. Little sweet 15, 16. Likewise, Jeff Gwynn's 2013 book, Manson, includes several references to Melcher's having sex with Ruth Ann Morehouse, all sourced to Jacobson. So yeah, this is another reason that they might have been covering up for Terry Meltcher. And this is where it comes from, yeah, from Jeff Gwynn's book as well. The rumour comes. But yeah, Ruth Ann Morehouse was obviously underage. Yeah. Yeah, that word. I couldn't say it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, what are you shocked? Yeah. That you would lie to get out of being charged with statutory rape or whatever. Yeah. That's it, isn't it? Yeah. 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 You used to think those step was only the hottest girls, yeah. But no. Anything they could get. Yeah. Well, apparently the Golden Penetrators just wanted to sleep with as many girls as they could, didn't they? That was their mission. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a little bit more to read out, I think. I've already got, to the cross-examination, because he asked him a bit more about the music he saw. Mr. Melcher, were there about 30 people present in this gully the first time you listened to Manson perform? Yes, sir. And had you ever met Manson before that date at Dennis Wilson's or any other place when you actually went to the Spahn Ranch? Could you rephrase that? Yes, you went to the Spahn Ranch. Right. In May or so of 1969. Correct? Correct. And your purpose in going there was to listen to Mr. Manson audition for you, correct? Correct. Now, had you ever met or seen Mr. Manson before that time? Yes, as I testified, I met him at Dennis Wilson's house the previous summer. Had you seen him at Dennis Wilson's once or more than once? I'm not really certain. I don't mean to appear vague, but if I ever went to Dennis Wilson's, it wasn't to see Manson. I gather that. Dennis Wilson was a friend of yours? Right, and so was Jacobson, and Jacobson was also living there at the time, so... And I suppose you also had business dealings with those two people, Wilson and Jacobson. Not really. But in any event, do you remember seeing Manson at Wilson's house? Correct. Once I do. You only have an outstanding recollection of seeing him once there. Yes, the reason for that is because he sang some of his songs that particular day. Did you ever have a discussion with Mr. Manson at Dennis Wilson's? Any kind of extended conversation beyond introductions? Not that I recall, no, sir. And were any of Manson's so-called girls with him at the time you saw Manson and heard him play at Dennis Wilson's? There were quite a few girls there. I don't know if I could classify them as Manson's girls, or whose girls they were, really. Now, directing attention back to the Spahn Ranch, were there a number of people in this gully at the time you heard Manson play? Yes. And were they both young girls and young boys, or largely young girls? It was probably maybe 3-to-1 ratio of women to men. Did Manson do all the singing, or did the girls and other people there join in? From time to time, they all joined in. Did Manson appear to be the leader of this songfest? Most definitely. And why do you say most definitely? We were talking about the first occasion now. Well, he sat on a large rock, surrounded by the rest of the people, and he played the guitar, and none of the others played any instruments, except for, I believe, there were maybe several tambourines, and he sang songs, and they occasionally joined in, and it was his party, there was no question about that. Was there some difficulty in getting down to this gully, Mr. Melcher? In other words, was the access to it difficult? It was very narrow. I'm not sure that I would call it... It was a pathway along the side of a cliff with a rope that went down to the gully. Did you have to use the rope in order to aid your descent? Well, unless you were terribly agile, it was safer to use the rope. Yes, I would say that. Did Manson lead the way down to the bottom of the gully, if you know? I don't really recall. Did you see Mr. Watson at the Spine Ranch on this occasion, that you went there and auditioned Manson? I don't recall that either, sir. Was Greg Jacobson with you on this first occasion? Yes, sir, he was. Did he go into the gully with you? Yes, he did. Did Manson appear to react in any particular way when you told him that he couldn't record, unless he was a union member? In other words, did he appear disappointed or mad or upset, or did he appear... No? Unmoved? The latter. Did you tell him at the time you weren't impressed with his singing and guitar playing? By him, I refer to Manson. Well, just yes or no. I'm not really certain of that either. If one is in the business of recording people, auditioning them, both vocally and as a composer, you learn to adapt a certain amount of reserve. That is a good way of putting it. Diplomacy would be another good word to use. Yes, I think if I said anything at all, it was probably to the effect of that I would, don't call me, I'll call you. I would be in touch with him through Mr. Jacobson. All right, now did you go back a few days later? Right. And did you again go down to the gully? Right. And again, did it appear to be Manson's show? Oh, yes. Did it appear to you, Mr. Melcher, to be sort of staged, the whole performance? The first time it didn't, but the second time it did. And I'm using the correct word, staged. Staged. Use your own word. That will do, staged or rehearsed, or whatever you would like. Again, Manson appeared to you to be the leader. Oh, yes. Did you see Mr. Watson on this second occasion? I don't recall that either. Did you ever go back again to the Spahn Ranch? No, I didn't. Did you ever see Manson after that? No, I didn't. My reason, or reasons, rather, for going there on both occasions was as a favour to Mr. Jacobson. Not that I was really, looking, I understand, for a new singer. Now, on these occasions that you recall Mr. Watson being at your home, were you giving parties on these occasions, or did you just happen to drop by with Mr. Wilson, or Mr. Jacobson, or both? Do you understand the question? Yes. Tell me if you don't understand, and I will rephrase it. Yes, I do. Was I giving parties? Others who were present at my house one evening when I had, I suppose you would call it, a buffet dinner for Dennis Wilson and Greg, and all the people who were living at Dennis's house, say that Watson was there. But I'm not sure of that either, and the rest of the times they weren't. I don't believe they were parties at all. They were merely dropping by in the afternoon, sort of visits. Is there any doubt in your mind that Mr. Watson was there at all at your house on any occasion? I'm sure he was there on several occasions. And he appeared to you to be tagging along with either Wilson or Jacobson, is that right? Yes, sir. And I take it he didn't have much to say, Mr. Watson, that is. Well, I never got to know him, really. You wouldn't describe him as a scintillating personality, would you? When you saw him at your home, I take it. His visits were, as I recall, brief, and he was along with a friend. He was a friend, or, well, let's say a friend of a friend. And your reaction to Mr. Watson was limited to believing that he was a friendly, pleasant fellow, right? Aha, that's correct. You had no philosophical discussion with him, did you? Not that I recall, no. Now, when did you leave the Cielo Drive residence for the last time? I mean, what was the approximate date? Sometime around, well, it was just after the new year of 1969. And was this buffet dinner that you gave, at which you think Mr. Watson was present, the last time you saw him, to your knowledge, until court today? If you don't remember, say so. No, as I said previously, I'm not certain whether or not Mr. Watson was present at that buffet dinner. I don't recall that testimony, and the buffet was maybe a year and a half prior to my leaving the Cielo residence. Could you describe to us how Mr. Watson appeared to you physically when you observed him at your residence on these half a dozen or so occasions when he was with Wilson or Jacobson or both? Maybe I could make some suggestions. All right. He didn't appear as thin as he does now, for one thing, is that right? Well, I'm not really sure. I have been told he has lost weight, and I have read that. Don't tell us what you read or heard from other people. We have to elicit your testimony from your own personal knowledge, and not what other people told you, or not what you may have read. You understand that, don't you? Yes, sure, okay. Do you remember anything about his physical appearance in 1968 when you saw him on those occasions? Did he appear neat, or did he appear dirty, or was he smelly, or was he well groomed? Did he wear old clothes? Did he wear modish clothes? Do you remember anything? Did he look like a hippie, or did he look straight? Well, if I had to choose between his having appeared as a hippie or as a straight, as you put it, I would say a hippie. Now, what led you to that belief? Was his hair about as long as yours is, was it? I think so. And he didn't have the beard, though. Is that correct, to the best of your recollection? Not that I recall, no, sir. And did he wear blue jeans? I presume so. That's what most young people wear. But you don't recall independently? No, I don't. Whether he wore... I didn't take snaps. Did he wear love beads and leather thongs or things like that? I don't recall that either. You don't recall whether or not his clothes were even dirty or dishevelled, do you? All I know is that he didn't have on a tie or tails or... Alright, he didn't wear a business suit, obviously. That's correct. But you wouldn't classify him as a hippie, would you, just because he didn't wear a coat and tie? I don't classify anybody as a hippie, sir. Therefore, you wouldn't classify Mr. Watson as a hippie when you saw him. Well, I did for your purposes, when you asked me whether he was a hippie or a straight. You were limited to two choices, so you took the one. That's right. Question by Mr. Keith. What you're telling me is I used some inadequate language in posing the question in the first place. Not. Because you don't feel that anybody is a hippie. Well, or you feel that it is a bad description of anybody. I wouldn't say inadequate. I would say, well, I'm not certain what I would say about that. Do you classify yourself as a straight, perhaps, or how do you? I have to. I wear a coat and a tie. I don't have any further questions. I don't know how to classify. And then there's the redirect examination by Mr. Bugliosi. During the summer of 1968, though, you haven't seen Mr. Watson except, of course, in the newspapers. He may have been at Spun Ranch on either or both of my two visits, but not that I recall. Thank you, no further questions. So yeah, got a bit incoherent there at the end with the lawyer, didn't it? But mainly made sense. But yeah, so he basically lied his ass off about how much he knew Manson, how much he saw them. Like I say, I can't find what he said at the Manson trial. Texas, not Melcher's testimony from the Manson trial, but Tom O'Neill apparently did, and I'm sure I read earlier when I was looking at Chaos that he said that he had never seen Tex inside the house. He had just seen him, in cars or hanging around. But at Tex's trial, he says like 6 or 7 times, doesn't he? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. He was sleazy and cheesy. Seems it, yeah. But I don't think he was really being that different to anyone else at the time. Yeah, the golden fabricators. Yeah. So it's understandable from much point of view. If I would have been him, I'd have also been scared to death to be involved in the family stuff. Yeah, that's it. The other line about it. Because Tom O'Neill does say that in one of his things, doesn't he? Yeah, you can understand why you would play down the relationship with Manson. But yeah, I think it is. But I think it is a bit worse than that. It's because he's trying to cover up the sex angle, the sex with the girls angle, isn't he? In that, of course. And also, I don't know why he had to deny that he ever recorded him, because apparently he did. And Rudy Altabelli said that he raved about him. And John Phillips said he heard a recording that Terry Meltcher gave him. So it looks like, he had to like completely lie to totally distance himself from Manson, basically. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. They're all off their faces so much, yeah. Can they remember anything correctly? And also, it lowers your inhibitions, and you're thinking ahead, and it makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do. Your inhibitions get lowered. And these people were so off their heads all the time. That seemed to be like the way of life at that time in the 60s. They were thinking it was going to be the future, wasn't it, to live like this? But it obviously got out of control. Yeah. That's it, yeah. Thirsty for Ruth, apparently. It's the really horrible thing. And she's like it when she was about, 14 or 15 years old. And Diane Lake in the documentary recently, she says that she went to record parties with record executives and had to sleep with the host of the parties. And she was only about 14 or 15 when she joined the Manson family as well, wasn't she? Terrible, yeah, all underage. It's where Jacobson says that he had a soft spot for her. Does that mean he slept with her too? That's the bad thing. Is he admitting that he did it as well? Terrible. Yeah, that's it. Some of the groupies were as young as 12, yeah. They called them the babies, didn't they, apparently? The underage ones. There was like groups of them. And Steven Tyler says some crazy stuff about underage groupies that you could call for in his biography. Yeah. That's it. Well, Ruth has never ever spoken, has she? She's never written a book or done any interviews or anything. Yeah, no one knows. I don't know. Yeah, if we'd even know she died. That's it. I don't know. Hmm. Hmm. Something wasn't right. But they looked very much like all the other communes, I imagine, at the time as well. There were probably loads of communes like that. And there were loads of like weird guys with weird philosophies that were exploiting women. I keep finding documentaries about these cults that were, and they really were cults, religious cults. But ones where, like paedophilia was promoted and stuff like that. So they really didn't look that different to other groups like them until the murders happened. That's the thing. So you can understand why people would have seen, the baby groupie thing was huge back then, and that's it. You could specifically ask for them. Look at Laurie Maddox and her name's Sable Starr, the other two that were underage. Sable Starr was with Iggy Pop, wasn't she? And Laurie Maddox was with Jimmy Page, of course, but David Bowie first, apparently. That's the other shocking thing. Laurie Maddox, yeah. Yeah, that's it. And Donovan said that, but that was actually a response to something that, okay, doesn't really matter. No one cares. Yeah, that's it. Courtney Love said that in an interview, didn't she? Well, that was on the Howard Stern show, wasn't it? Yeah, I've heard the clip of her saying that when she was 12. And she says, "Oh, but it's all right. I was already ruined." She sounds out of it as well. Like, yeah, obviously before she went to rehab or whatever, she was saying that. Yeah. Yeah, Kasabian took everything to her grave. Everything, yeah. Everything she knew. Still 14. No, it was Laurie Maddox that was with Bowie, the one that was with Jimmy Page later. Yeah, she was 14 years old, yeah. And that was before Jimmy Page. She was a virgin, apparently, when she went with Bowie, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it. This is the other thing. Because Doris Day had just, because I did the Golden Penetrator stream, I talked about this. Doris Day had just gone through a big shock. Well, her husband, the one that gave Terry Meltcher his name, the one called Melcher, when he died, it came out that he'd embezzled all her money and she owed thousands in tax, and so she had no money. And she had to do a TV show that the money had already been spent. She'd been paid for it, and the money had already been spent by her husband. And Terry Melcher had just had to say it, tell this to Doris Day. So she was obviously really really devastated by that, and then having to find out that her son had just been up to all this, and that being in the press probably would have finished her off. So that's another reason why they wanted to cover it up, I assume. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's it. Well, this is after the Bernard Crow shooting. Apparently, that is when people did start to not let them in anymore and all that sort of shit, and refuse the calls and shut doors in their faces and that after Bernard Crow. But yeah, apparently, according to DiCarlo, Melcher continued to return to the ranch even after all that. Yeah, yeah. Mm. Yeah, neither side actually wanted the truth to come out. And Charlie would not have told the truth as he knew it anyway, because he would have been snitching on someone, wouldn't he? So there's not really a point. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just watching the chat. Yeah. God. Yeah, sex, drugs, underage girls, down low homosexuality. Will have to be sanitised from celebrities' images during the trial. Yeah, that's it. Because that would have been shocking as well. The fact that Dennis Wilson had an affair with Charles Manson, and they had quite a hot relationship, apparently, didn't they? would have been too much for people to handle at the time, or the more conservative people still. Especially with a man like Charles Manson as well. He was like being portrayed as the most evil man ever since, wasn't he? So to find out, the drummer of the Beach Boys had been shagging him. Would have been too much, wouldn't it? Yeah. And that's it. But yeah, imagine how many men sat with the girls who ended up being the killers as well, because Susan, it sounds like Susan was pretty promiscuous, so I bet Susan slept with a few of these guys. And they wouldn't want that coming out after the murder had happened, and she just sounded absolutely insane at the trial, and spoke so callously. No one would want it coming out that they had slept with them, would it? Yeah. 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 Jacobson said it as well, did he? Yeah, because apparently Tom O'Neill got it from a woman that worked for the DA's office. She was a reporter or something, a court reporter, but she worked for Bugliosi's office. And he stole DA records as well, that's the thing. So what did he conceal there? How many things has he concealed just from stealing the records when he shouldn't have even removed them? And yeah, like I say, covered up for him. And it is shocking that he got away with it. And it's saying, the reason that Dennis Wilson never had to testify was because he had gone completely crazy, basically. So they kept him out of court. They made everyone else testify, so Dennis Wilson didn't have to because he had just completely lost it by that point, apparently. Like, you don't believe it? You don't believe they had sex, so I can believe it, definitely. Yeah. The Beach Boys were all wholesome. Well, it turns out they weren't really when you look into it, doesn't it? Yeah, they were terrible. They were drugged out, crazy. Their manager was God doing all sorts. Fucking hell. It's a dark, dark story, isn't it? For all of these bands that were presented as wholesome and nice, like the Mamas and Papas as well. The story of the Mamas and Papas is absolutely dark and disturbing when you get into it, Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Apparently Dennis Wilson was threatening to write a book, wasn't he, just before he died? And his death looks like an accident, but was it? Yeah. Yeah, just before he went swimming and drowned. Did he really accidentally hit his head, or did someone smack him with a rock and chuck him in the river? Yeah. Good, yeah, John Phillips was a sicko. And just the story of how lots of people treated Mama Cass as well is just horrible. And Michelle Phillips, everything Michelle Phillips got up to is crazy. All their stories are pretty crazy, But yeah, it's just they covered up so much about this time period. And it kind of taints it, doesn't it, really? You can't listen to the music. The music doesn't hit the same once you know these things, does it? It's just like, oh, no. Yeah. And the film quote was, I know why Charles Manson did what he did. Someday I'll tell the world. I'll write a book and explain why he did it. And then he walked out that interview and fell into the water and drowned. Yeah, fucking hell, yeah. Then he drowned. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Michelle Phillips must be 100. Yeah. Well, have you seen there is quite recent interviews with her. I doubt she's that into it now, is she? I think she got that all out of her system a long time ago. And again, I don't judge these women harshly because they were just bloody doing what was encouraged at the time, and everyone thought it was the future, and that was the way it was going to go. Apparently, just had a great time. Yeah. What? You think she isn't? Yeah. I know. I saw one with a Sorry, I know I saw one with a thumbnail where they'd exaggerated how rough she looks. They'd like made her look older and worse. She doesn't look like that. She actually looks all right for her. She looks how you would expect her to look for her age, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Does anyone else think his drowning was suspicious? Because I'm in two minds about it. Because he was a drunk, wasn't he? Anyway, and he was trying to get from like the terrible Lifetime movie I saw about it, the Beach Boys. He was diving into the harbour where the boat that he had lived on with his ex-wife was sunk, and he was pulling stuff out of it. He was climbing in and pulling their things out of the boat, and he must have bumped his head and basically didn't come up and drowned. But yeah, I think it was. I don't think that sounds right. Yeah. he was afraid for his life, was he, as well? Yeah, because he knew too much. Yeah. I don't know. I think they want to, but well, Tex apparently isn't even trying for parole now. If you read the statements that's on Tex's websites and that, he's not even expecting to get parole, so he's got nothing to lose if he does change his story now. And at the end of that documentary, Stephen Parent's brother says, you owe us the truth. Like, was it really because of Manson, or was it because you were so out of it on drugs? Was it to do with drugs? You owe us the truth. You should tell us. And he does. It's something he can do before he dies, isn't it? To put something slightly right, at least, is to tell us. But I honestly think because of how fucking fucked up he apparently was by the drugs, but he really didn't have that clear a memory of what happened. I really doubt he did. Really know, but he must have some fucking memory of why he did it and all this sort of shit. He must have some idea, mustn't he? Hmm. 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 John Phillips book has his version of the backstage squabble in Cass's dressing room and John's fight with Billy Doyle. Phillips comes up in the hero in his version, same as Doyle in his. I've never read all of John Phillips' book. Does he mention Billy Doyle as well? So like I said, I just searched it for any mention of Manson, and that's the thing that he says about Manson, basically. But yeah, it says that he heard a recording of him from Terry Meltcher too, and in court Terry Meltcher said he never recorded him. So yeah, it could have been. The recording's done at Brian Wilson's house, but actually, yeah. But then there's that other guy as well, the person that worked for the Beach Boys, saying that they did record him while they were on tour. So yeah, he's obviously just full of shit, isn't he? Oh, excuse me. I'm going to really yawn dinner. Terrible. Mm, yeah. I think Beausoleil should have been released way before Leslie. Oh, well, Beausoleil's done other stuff, though, as well. While he's been in prison, hasn't he, that's made it worse for him. So you can understand why Beausoleil hasn't been released. But also, like everyone says, it's unfair. Well, him and Bruce both, if they were just being held for the crime they committed and they weren't associated with the Manson case, both of them would probably have been out by now. And there's people who did worse than what they are convicted of that have been released. But yeah, who knows? Yeah, I've never watched that. I want to watch some of her TV specials actually, because I think it's sad she never got her own show. I think she deserved her own show, and she probably eventually would have got one. That would have been interesting to watch because she was good at light entertainment by the look of things as well. She did seem confident when talking to people and talking to audiences, and that she could have done it. I think, yeah. You mentioned Doyle, but not Pick by name. Yeah, well, Pick seems to be the one who was most frequently in her life, so it's probably Pick. And I think Pick Dawson, because of the Pick and Pig thing, that's his name was so well known. It is probably Pick he's talking about, I assume, rather than Billy. But who knows? Yeah, you can't stand Bruce. Yeah, I think he's a snake. Well, I think bloody they've all been in prison for so long, and it was so long ago. And Bruce, the part that Bruce played in all the crimes wasn't as bad as what the others did. But then a lot of people believe that he's the fucking Zodiac and that he's the devil and that he's worse and that he's murdered more people than he's ever convicted of. But yeah, but going off what he did, what he's actually convicted of, actually, I don't think he's the worst of all of them. But it depends what you believe. If you believe that he killed more people than everyone else. Yeah, that's it. A lot of people think he's the Zodiac killer, don't they? Yeah. And there is some compelling stuff. Well, like I say, if you watch that Bruce Davis stream that I did, Casey Fields helped me put together a timeline for Bruce Davis for that stream, and it shows how he was in the same place as a few of the Zodiac murders at the same time that they happened, you know. But he travelled a lot. He sure did travel a lot, which makes me think he was more involved in drugs and probably smuggling drugs or something like that, because he flew around the world so much. And that's the other compelling thing that links him to Joel Pugh, is that they both seem to travel to the same countries in the same time period. So it's like, did they know each other? There's like more evidence that they knew each other, maybe. But I don't think there was anything that actually put them together in those countries. But they both happened to travel to the same places at the same time a lot, you know. Where did he go to the UK? It was to do with Scientology, wasn't it? He was staying with the Scientology lot. Because that cottage that we went to, there's actually my bit of footage of it. But there's more footage of that cottage that you can see me in as well, the Bruce Davis Scientology cottage. I went there with Nicholas and a Belgian guy called Terry and a journalist, I forget his name, sorry, who had written an article for the Daily Mail about Joel Pugh, and did Bruce kill Joel Pugh, basically. And he seemed to believe that he had. Yeah. Yeah. Why did he go there? Yeah. Well, studying Scientology is what they said. What he said, wasn't it? Yeah. But he apparently got kicked out as well for doing drugs. They caught him smoking weed or something. Yeah. So he got kicked out of Scientology. So what was he doing? And there's also more speculation that he flew back to the UK after the murders and sold cocaine that was taken from Cielo Drive or something like that. Yeah, at a Frank Zappa concert. But yeah, that is like difficult to prove because of the passport stamps. Yeah. But yeah, I think well, Nicholas wouldn't say it lightly, so he must have seen some proof. Yeah, that he came back to the UK after the murders again as well. He didn't just go there a couple of times. We'll go for that one time when he stayed at that cottage that we know about. And so could he have come back and killed Joel Pugh? But personally, I think Joel Pugh probably did actually commit suicide. Weird way to do it. It must have been horrible, but I think it was suicide. I don't think he was murdered. Yeah. Right, well, this has been going for over an hour. So I'll end this now and give me 5 minutes and I'll come back and do an after show for everyone. Thanks for coming, everyone. Anyway, like I say, and like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll say it again. Thank you for watching for this long. And yeah, I've monetized the channel as well. I don't know if anyone's noticed that there might be ads appearing at the beginning and probably at the end of some of my videos now. I don't know how that affects live streams. I don't know if an ad plays when my live stream starts. But when you're watching the playback, you might see an ad. But I haven't done the mid-roll ads, so they won't. The thing doesn't get interrupted in the middle, only at the beginning and at the end. And yeah, I might do memberships in the future as well. We'll see what people want. Yeah. Anyway, I'll hang around for a minute because there'll be a notification when I go live again if I do an after show. And I'll see you in 5 minutes. Just get up, stretch my legs, have another cup of tea. Yeah, give us an after show. Yeah. Right, yeah, I'll end this. Like I say, 5 minutes, I'll come back. Thanks for coming, everyone. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Oh, and I might do another stream because I'm off work. So there might be a stream next Sunday or maybe even Thursday. I'll see what I feel like. Yeah. Right.